Hey everybody, this is Dean with the Two Party Podcast. Just September 9th, just kind of going through some things, some different topics we have on our board here. Want to go through something that's kind of personal to me is a lot of our audience and personal people that know me, they know my past with addiction and recovery. Uh, I was I was way off track many years ago with drugs, alcohol, you name it. It was there. I came from a very dysfunctional family, very dysfunctional. And those of you that know me kind of have more of that history, and maybe in the future we'll discuss a little more of that. But um, I, I've never blamed that. Has that been the environmental situation of growing up was always a problem. However, I never really always or took to blaming the dysfunctional household I grew up in for my addiction. Did it create an environment or raise me with a type of subconscious mental aspect that made me probably preemptive to use or preemptive to have those premonitions of being an addict? Yes. Was addictive behavior there as a child? Yes. Did I witness a lot of drug use and alcoholism as a child? Yes. So, I mean, obviously, there's varying factors in every different article you read or science study. You're going to see different angles as to how someone becomes an addict, what entails the prerequisites of addiction, and some people, they had a great childhood and they end up addicts. Some people grew up in horrible households and never used in their entire lives. Got away from it, I guess you could say. So, one of the interesting studies I read a while back, and I'd have to look it up, but there was a study where they basically used the laboratory mice or rats, and they created an environment. I believe this was a study on cocaine, and they created a kind of a horrible environment and they kind of laced the food or water with cocaine, and the bad environment, the rats always went to, they'd go back and they'd get more, and they'd go back and they'd get more, and they'd go back and they'd get more, and they were just completely addicted to the nonsense that was available to them in the containers. And then they switched it up, and they changed it to a really nice environment where they had lots of things to do. The rats, it was just such a better environment for them, exercise and just different things that they could play with and look at and do. And they noticed that with the bottle, the laced bottle and I believe it was in the water, that eventually the mice just didn't even use it. They didn't even care for it. They'd go get a drink of water, and it was just whatever. But it wasn't that they were going back to the laced one, going for the addiction. So it's interesting when you look at that study alone about the science based on just the environment. So let's put that to an analogy of basically let's say low income neighborhood or low income housing, or for lack of a better term, just being a single mother, parent, whatever, in an environment, or even a married couple in an environment that's just not conducive to raising, a child. It's not a safe environment. There's drug deals and this and that going on. That environment can produce addiction. It was seen in that study, and obviously that plays out in human nature as well. If you have everything you need in a beautiful, great environment, I mean, if you provide somebody the human details they need, the things they need are provided for, and they have plenty of activity and things to stimulate their mind and physical body, it's very unlikely that person, I'm sure that they will, but it's very unlikely that I could see that person would go down a road of addiction. That's not to say they wouldn't, but that study alone always had me thinking. Now, I'm back when I was going into recovery, I dealt with fully on the 12 steps. For a Lifetime group in Daytona, Florida, was a group that I was the GSR of for about I guess a year over there. I was a total member of the group for about 3 years. So that being said, that I learned a lot in that area when I was in recovery through NA. I attended NAAA. At the time, it was more for me. It was more the drug side of things that I was attending the NA more than I needed, I guess you could say, the AA. But let's be real, they're all based on the 12-step program. They're all based on, excuse me, they're all based on stepping outside of yourself. Is what initially, I guess, is what the breaking point for me is stepping outside of my addictions, my selfishness, my fears, learning that I'm not a person who's capable of having going to a party and drinking like other people or drugging like other people. I am not a person who's capable of mentally maintaining myself on a social level of using drugs and alcohol. I'm the type of person that there's no limit, there's no bar, and if there is a bar, I'm the one that's setting it. That being said, many that have known me, the circle gets smaller as you get older of your good friends, especially when most of your friends, as mine, still from where I grew up at Palm Harbor, Florida, and different areas of Florida, as well as throughout the United States, other friends that I have, their circles, they still using. In Florida, especially, the pill epidemic is off the chain. People just falling out and dying left and right. Fentanyl. You name it, it just escalates. It goes from, these people are pill popping to now we're all fentanyl and heroin junkies. It's insane how many friends I've lost. But on that note, I reflect back now. I'm just going to put it out there and be very honest. I haven't been to a meeting and I don't even know how long. I quit drinking, smoking cigarettes in 2014. Have not. I think I've had maybe 8 beers since 2014, and that's been on vacation with my wife. Maybe an occasional martini, or not a martini, but maybe a margarita with my wife. I'm just not where I used to be. I don't drink like that anymore, where I had to get off work and have a 12-pack. That's just not my lifestyle. I'm not, and again, a lot of people kind of twist things as far as like people that don't drink or don't drink anymore are knocking the ones that do. I have no problem with someone going and grabbing a drink, and if you can control it and control your life and it doesn't affect you in a negative way, more power to you. It's just not something I circle my life around anymore. Do I like a good beer? Sure. I just don't drink anymore like that. Vacation, sure. If I have no obligations, I'm not driving, I'm on vacation with my wife, somebody I can enjoy having a drink with and spend a good time watching the sunset, I'm good with that. As far as drugs go, I gave up drugs in 2013-ish. I want to say 2013. It was just a pinnacle part of my life, a point in my life where I was just completely useless, honestly. If I'm going to be real with myself and real with my audience here, I was useless, completely useless. I was broken. I was just at a point in my life where I've never been a person to give up and think suicide was an option. And even in that time, it was not. But I was just so low and just didn't see. There was just no getting through the dark cloud. There was no seeing light at the end of the tunnel. I had just received custody of my son. Had fought a battle to get my son. Was in a relationship that was it was just at its tail end, falling apart amongst 2 different patterns of parenting. And we decided to go our separate ways. And in the midst of that, led me back to addiction again. Started drinking heavily again. Started using any opportunity I had to use. Started using. Just a horrible cycle that had gone on. And one of my doctors, one of my counselors I went to, they diagnosed me with episodic drug use. And if you're familiar with any way, shape, or form with psychology and counseling, that's basically the way I've always looked at it was an opportunist way of getting high or drinking. And for me, what it was is anytime I was in a situation that was overwhelming. So in other words, if something got stressful in my life, I would go on basically what you would consider a bender. I'd start drinking heavy. There was just many times that I remember just not understanding, sitting in a room and going, why the hell did I do that? Or what was I, everything, I've got everything by the balls here in life. And what in the hell am I thinking to go out and spend my money or do this, or, damage a relationship with somebody, hurt them in that way. But I didn't get it. I didn't understand that there was I guess, medical definition for what was going on. And I also have a diagnosed as an explosive personality. And so that created a lot of problems throughout my life with my drug use and with the people around me, with the relationships that I was in. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of researching some stuff as we're sitting here having this discussion on the podcast. So I'm trying to catch some information, kind of give you guys a better idea of what's going on. So what I'm talking about, I could sabotage the best relationship. I could be in a relationship, and it was almost a cycle. You could almost see it. It was like every 6 to 7 years, I would just reach a point where I'm like, okay, this is cool. I'm done with it. And I just toss it in the air. There was no care or concern for the person across the table. There was no concern for the person in the mirror. It became a real issue where I basically sabotaged anything I had worked for. I had sabotaged. So I'd build myself up, build a business up, build a relationship up, whatever it may be. And people that know me know I put 110% into everything I do. And that went back to drugs and addiction as well. So I would go 110% into my addiction. And unfortunately, that's not a good thing. But I would always put, I'd build a business. I'd give my all. I'd put everything into it. And then I'd reach a point where, you know what, screw all this. I'm done with it. And I'd just throw the towel in, just done. But what it would always entail doing was, back then, was reaching for drugs or reaching for a drink, reaching for something where I knew, like, okay, I'm going to ruin this. I'm going to totally sabotage this. But upon doing so, I might as well just destroy my my mental state, my emotional state by just using. And I would do so. And at that time, it wasn't a conscious decision. It was more of that was just what I did. That was just how I coped. It was my coping mechanism. And that being said, there's just so many issues you hear about nowadays with addiction, and so many lives that are torn apart, families that are broken. People, you can't get mental health anymore. You can't get substance abuse help anymore. And you can get, the states or whatever is going to refer you to a 12-step program. And I am never going to knock a 12-step program. I know a lot of spiritual leaders, Christians and stuff that'll kind of knock that program, but because they really feel like 100% God's got this. And I'm all aboard. And I'm a Christian, and I believe that God has carried me in ways that I could not have done myself, which goes back to your 12-step and believing in a higher power. But that being said, there's certain things that God may do in my life, but there's certain things that God is going to make sure I do. He's not going to walk me through something without me doing some work. And that's where I feel the 12-step program works hand in hand with, whether it be Christianity or any other religion you may be, affiliated with, whatever your belief system. The 12-step program is good, but it worked for me to work through the steps. I had a great counselor in Daytona, Mr. Gray, one of the best I've ever had, and Mr. Tom, who Mr. Tom worked on relational. He worked on fixing and teaching us to cope better in relationships and teach us how to work better in a marriage or even in a friendship relationship. So his focus and his study was relational. That's all he taught, was relational recovery. And Mr. Gregg, what he focused on, he was an actual heroin addict himself. He was a huge, well-known person in Daytona, club owner, a musician, super, super popular dude at one point, and he went down the drain. I mean, his rock bottom was being found on a park bench, overdosed on heroin, before he got to a point where he could turn his life around and really see the errors in what he was doing. But that guy had so much knowledge, and he did he not just taught about the addiction but he was very real. So he was the type of person that would just smack you in the face with the reality of what you were doing, what causing it, why you were an addict. And it was because of his experiences and his experience in his recovery that he was able to share where he failed, where he slipped, where he relapsed, where he found a needle back in his arm. Just an amazing guy. And he did a study. It was a 12-step study, but it was a big book. You hear people laugh about the big book and the big book thumping. That was what he did. He taught that. And now that guy could read that book to you backwards and forwards and still tell you he could fail. But some of the knowledge I gained from that guy was amazing. He could look at somebody, look at an addict, and know exactly where they were because he was there. He had been there. He could tell you when you were going to relapse. He could tell you when what you were thinking. He could tell you when you were not on pace with your recovery. Just very, very enlightening. But the main things I gathered out of that when I came out of there was a program I was in doing that. When I came through all of that program and working on my recovery, and I stepped up and jumped right full force in the bandwagon, which, like I said, 110% I always gave. And I did it for that too, for my recovery. And I learned a lot. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about other people, and that their baggage is not mine to carry, and mine is not theirs to carry. And it's okay to walk away from a situation that I don't maybe understand, or maybe, maybe I created a situation, but I need to step back and evaluate it. It taught me a lot of coping mechanisms. So one of the things I was going to talk about is not just an addiction, which is something I'd like to discuss a little more in the future on some other episodes, and like to have some guests on that can kind of help with that. But one of the things that's been on my mind a lot lately is addiction and success. For a lot of addicts, it's hard for them to get to a point where they're back to being able to maintain and cope until they really get through that point in their recovery and their addiction that they really have given it up. They've quit. And it's now a matter of getting themselves on track, whether it's starting a business or just working a job. Some people, it's just that hard to even function Monday through Friday after addiction and through recovery. They've got to start even as a part-time and work their way up to getting a full-time. And some people, that's good enough for some addicts. For some, they need success. They need to be recognized. And sometimes that's I guess a trigger. That sometimes that's a red flag. Sometimes that can put you back in addiction, because when you don't get recognized for what you're trying to do, it can trigger you. And so I've been, a lot of what I've looked at is, some of my successes and failures through my recovery, some of my high points, some of my low points. One of the things I was reading, it's on a website for American Addiction Centers, alcoholrehab.com. I'm just reading some of this. It just talks about success in recovery. It talks about the importance of success in recovery, the dangers of success in recovery, success and romancing the drink and drug, dangers of the pink cloud in recovery. There's just a lot of cool little topics here. So I'm going to read through just one of them real quick. And it's the importance of the success in recovery. And we all as human beings, we want recognition, and we want people to like us, no matter what we feel about. You hear people say, I don't care what someone thinks of me. Don't be fooled at all. That's BS. We all care about what people think. That's our defense coming up saying, we don't care what people think about us. Never did care about what someone says about me. I'm that way. It doesn't hurt me. However, I can turn my emotions on and off. I've learned to do that over the years. It's kind of a good thing and kind of a bad thing, but it doesn't bother me what other people have to say. However, it does, because deep down, I don't want someone to not like me, and I don't want to have a conflict in a relationship, friendship, marriage, whatever it may be. I don't want that conflict. And so deep down, I do want people to like me, and I do want to have success. So I'm going to read through a couple of these and just hit the topic here. It's if people become sober and it does not make much of a difference in their life, they are unlikely to put much effort into maintaining their recovery. The benefits of experiencing some success include the better the life in recovery, the less reason the individual has to return to their addiction. So if you've got hit success and you're doing good, your business is good, life is good, your bills are paid, you got a car, you got a house, you've got nice clothes, you're not really you don't have any reason to go use. Everything's good. Most addicts suffer from low self-esteem, and this negativity impacts their experience of the world. One of the best antidotes to low self-esteem is success. And I agree with that, and I disagree with that. It is a good antidote. It does make you feel good, and it does help. However, it's a false narrative. It's just not a good foundation. So if you're basing your feel good on your self-esteem, I would say you're going to fail at some point. That's not going to hold you up always. Success encourages people to keep going. The desire to experience more success can encourage the individual to achieve things that they might have once believed were impossible. Success might not improve their life of the individual, but also their family. Those people in recovery who find success are a wonderful inspiration to those struggling to be sober. Now, that's something I want to touch on. In recovery, in addiction, in 12-step program, the reason you're going to these boring meetings and these people, if you went to the old ones, you go to a smoke-filled room, it was just crazy, everybody drinking coffee, all caffeined up, or not caffeined up. But you'd go to these meetings and you listen to people talk at some of these meetings, or you just go around the room and other people would tell their story. And some of them were fresh addicts, some of them had been, sober for years, but there's a reason for it. And the reason is there's hope. You're hearing the story of somebody who's made it. They've made it out of where you're at. It is inspiring. And one of the big things the big book talks about, one of the big things that I've always held on to, and a lot of people that know me know this, is I speak about my past and my life without reserve. I don't filter anything I've been through. If you ask me, I'm going to tell you what I've done. I don't hold back. I'm not ashamed of my past. I've gotten past that hump in life. So to give my testimony and my story to somebody, if I think it's going to support and help them, I'm going to do it. And that's the same with what they discuss in the big book is sharing about your addiction and your story with other addicts. You may save a life, and it's so worth it. Success is a reward for a job well done. Those who do not achieve success can feel frustrated and resentful, and that's very true. You get successful, you feel good, you get patted on the back. You don't really get patted on the back when you're just an addict out using. It's just not something that happens every day unless you're just other addicts around you trying to use your drugs. The pain of addiction fades into memory after a few months or years. Success can act as a new motivation to keep people sober. Success in life can be a good guide for progress. It can indicate the individual that they are on the right track. I'm going to agree with both those statements. It is a good motivation. You do feel good. Does the memories fade? It does when you're busy. It doesn't for me. Speaking just on my own experience, it does not fade over the years. I know where I was. I know where I came from, and it helps remind me of why I'm not there. It helps remind me of my goals and my dreams for the future of where I'm going. So it doesn't go away, and it shouldn't. You shouldn't be rubbed in your face, but you should always remind yourself. You don't need someone else to do it, but you should always remind yourself of where you've come from, and each level of success you reach, you should celebrate. You should be happy. The dangers of success in recovery. Now, the addict learns to associate substance abuse with reward. That's a big problem we just discussed. This means that they achieve their success in recovery. They may develop a craving for alcohol for celebration. Now, that's a big issue. I kind of dealt with that for a while early on. I thought, man, I'm doing so good, I can drink. And if you did, it was a relapse. Or I can go use drugs. I'm good. I can go get high right now. And then tomorrow I'll just head back over. No big deal. That's just such a false statement. And for anybody that knows a true addiction, knows a real addict and how they're wired, one time falling off, the relapse is going to happen in recovery, but it doesn't have to. And when it does, it sets you back sometimes even further than where you were to begin with. And for people that are real bad pills and drugs, heroin, even heavy alcohol, when you're in a really bad state and you come into a recovery and then you relapse, sometimes it puts you so far back you may not make it back. You may just be that person that just keeps going. So it's important to not celebrate things or talk yourself into believing that it's okay to celebrate. It is common for people to celebrate success with alcohol. It's just kind of in our it's in our society. It's what everything through college, everywhere you go, you're celebrating with alcohol or whatever. The individual may feel they deserve to drink or use drugs. And again, that's what I just touched on. It's just crazy. The other one I want to touch on is the success in romancing the drug. So this is something that occurs, and I'm sure other addicts, this is just my personal opinion. Romancing the drink or drug occurs when people begin to remember the times when substance abuse seemed to be enjoyable. there's a saying with drugs and alcohol: the first time you do it is the best you'll ever get, the best you'll ever feel, and you'll never get that high or that drunk again. So you'll never get that feeling again, and it's supposedly a true statement scientifically. The way your receptors work, it just never happens again, and that's a lot of times that's why you're chasing a high for addicts. So that being said, the romancing or you look back and go, oh man, I used to have so much fun when I did that. I went there, I used to think that way at some point in my early recovery, and that man, I used to have so much fun before I got that bad. And the problem is that bad. The fun doesn't last very long when you're a true addict. The fun doesn't last long when you've reached the point of celebratory to literally losing everything, breaking every relationship around you, losing friends, family, jobs, cars, houses, possessions. It's tough. So that romancing the drink and drug, that's a big, big red flag. If you're starting to look back and give any kind of praise to a situation back then, it's fun to tell a story here and there. But don't make it sound like it's a great thing, because it's not. It's really nothing to be proud of. Dangers of the pink cloud of recovery. I've never really heard that term, but some individuals become so satisfied with their successes in early recovery that they can develop a pink cloud syndrome. They are high on life and have a great sense of freedom. The pink cloud is a welcome experience after years of addiction, but it can have its dark side. So I can see that. Okay. Success and the dangers of addiction and addiction substitution. So that's a big one we hear about all the time. People substitute their addictions. So they give up smoking, they start eating more, they get fat. They give up alcohol, they go on a fitness bender and end up, in the midst of a fitness bender, injuring their body or doing something that's pushing themselves a little too hard, or so you hear about that stuff. You hear about substituting one thing for another, one bad for another bad, or one bad for a good that ends up not being so good. How to enjoy success in recovery? That's a day-by-day battle. The reward for each individual to choose from to choose will depend on their preference, and it could include just going for a bite to eat, going for a holiday, vacation. There's a bunch of different ways to celebrate success. My way of celebrating success is with my wife. My way of celebrating success is with my son. My way of celebrating success is to pray. I like to sit down and thank God for the things that He's put before me, and that's just me. That's just what I believe. So I like to give back to where it all stems from. I did it. I didn't do it alone. There's a higher power in my life, God, and He moved me through mountains. He moved me through. He stood by my side and walked me through things that my wife, my son, nobody could have carried me through or been the target of my success. It had to be me, and it had to be God carrying me through certain things. And then the other thing I just want to touch on, on success, there's people from all walks of life that are addicts. You would never know. There's people you probably interact with daily that have addictions, whether it be drugs, alcohol, food, sex. There's sex addiction. You name it. There's addicts out there. One of the key things I wanted to hit on real quick before we close out is, here's some of your more successful. You got Samuel L. Jackson, dude. This guy, one of the hardest working men in Hollywood. He was an addict. He admits it. He's a recovering addict. Robert Downey Jr., everybody knows, from Addict to Avenger. You've got Bradley Cooper from Hungover to Hangover. Elton John was a coke addict and went from coke addict to knighthood. Anthony Hopkins, advocate for AA. Jada Pinkett, drug dealer to power player. Zac Efron, teen heartthrob to grown-up movie star. He was an alcoholic. Jared Butler, taking back control. Linda Carter, the original Wonder Woman, she was a heavy addict. Russell Brand, the list goes on and on. Jamie Lee Curtis, Brett Favre, Alec Baldwin, Stephen King, Keith Urban. It just goes on and on and on. So there's people from all walks of life. No matter what your view is, if you have a family member that affects your family so bad it drives you crazy and you just hate them, there's so many reasons and so many people in different aspects of life that are addicts. We need to learn to love people and care and accept. We don't ever enable. I'm never going to tell you to enable an addict. If an addict's an addict, they're an addict. You can't fix their problem. They have to fix their problem. You can love them, though. You can continue to love them. You can continue to encourage them. Don't ever give up. And if people had given up on me, I wouldn't be where I was or where I am. So on that note, I'm out of here. Dean Tedder, Two Party Podcast on addiction. Thank you.